What happens when spoiled college kids mistake a former military instructor for an easy target and then follow him into a parking lot? I'm about to tell you a story that went viral with over 5 million views. And trust me, what these boys learned that night changed their lives forever. My name is Jason King. I'm 48 years old, and I've been married to my incredible wife, Maleva, for 22 years. That Saturday evening in downtown Austin, Texas, we were celebrating our anniversary at Marcel's, one of those upscale steakhouses where a dinner costs more than most people spend on groceries in a week. Maleva looked absolutely stunning in her black cocktail dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled. At 44, she still gets mistaken for someone in her early 30s, and tonight she was glowing with happiness. We'd both worked hard to get to this point in our lives, me as the owner of 3 successful fitness centers, her as a physical therapist who just opened her own practice. But our perfect evening started to shift when I noticed 3 young men at the corner table. College kids, probably around 20 or 21, wearing expensive clothes and acting like they owned the place. The loudest one was a stocky guy with perfectly styled dark hair. Let's call him Chad. His 2 friends flanked him like bodyguards, one tall and skinny with a man bun, the other shorter with bleached hair and designer sunglasses indoors. They'd been stealing glances at Maleva all evening, whispering and snickering amongst themselves. I've seen this behavior before during my years as a hand-to-hand combat instructor in the Army. Young men who think confidence comes from putting others down. "Ready to head home, beautiful?" I asked Sarah, signing the check. That's when Chad stood up, swaying slightly from too much expensive whiskey. "Excuse me," he called out, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "I've got to ask, what's a woman like that doing with a guy like you?" The restaurant went quiet. Sarah's cheeks flushed red, not from embarrassment, but from anger. In 22 years of marriage, I'd seen that look maybe 5 times, and it never ended well for whoever caused it. "Excuse me?" I stood up slowly, my 6'2" frame unfolding to full height. Chad's friends were recording now, probably for their social media accounts. The tall one with the man bun stepped forward. "Dude, seriously though? She's like a total 10, and you're, well..." He gestured dismissively at me. "What exactly am I?" I asked, my voice staying perfectly calm. 20 years of military training teaches you to control your emotions, even when punk kids are disrespecting your wife in public. The third kid, the short one with sunglasses, laughed. "Honestly, you look like her dad, or maybe her personal trainer who got lucky." Sarah stood up, her hand finding mine. "Michael, let's just go." But Chad wasn't done. "No, wait," he said, pulling out his wallet. "How much do you charge? Because my boys and we'd love to show her what real young energy looks like." That's when something clicked. Not anger. I'd learned to control that years ago. But recognition. These weren't just disrespectful kids. They were predators who'd probably been getting away with this behavior their entire lives. "Interesting offer," I said, my voice getting that particular tone Sarah recognizes. It's the same tone I used with cocky recruits who thought they knew better than their instructor. "But I think you boys might be biting off more than you can chew." As Sarah and I headed for the exit, I could hear them behind us. The scraping of chairs, the clink of glasses being set down too hard, the whispered excitement of young men who think they're about to teach someone a lesson. The parking lot outside Marcel's was well lit, but mostly empty. Saturday night in downtown Austin, most people were either inside restaurants or bars, not wandering around parking lots. Sarah and I were halfway to my truck when I heard Chad's voice echoing off the concrete. "Hey, old man, we weren't finished talking." I stopped walking. Sarah's grip tightened on my arm. "Michael." "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, turning around to face them. "These boys want to finish their conversation." All 3 of them stood there under the parking lot lights, phones out and recording. Chad had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves like he was getting ready for a workout. The man bun kid was bouncing on his toes like a boxer. Sunglasses had taken off his jacket to show off his gym muscles. "Look," Chad said, stepping closer, "we tried to be nice about this inside, but your wife deserves better than some old washed-up has-been." "Washed up?" I repeated, genuinely curious about his assessment. "What makes you think I'm washed up?" "Dude, you're like 50. When's the last time you could even do a push-up?" I looked at these three young men. Really looked at them. Soft hands, expensive gym memberships they probably didn't use, the kind of fake confidence that comes from never being truly challenged. "Tell you what," I said, setting my keys in Sarah's palm. "Since you boys seem so concerned about physical fitness, how about we settle this with a little competition?" "Competition?" Chad laughed. "What kind of competition?" I shrugged off my suit jacket and handed it to Sarah. The movement was deliberate, practiced, the same way I used to prepare for training demonstrations when I needed to show new recruits proper technique. "Simple," I said, rolling up my sleeves. "Push-up contest. You three against me. Winner gets to walk away with their dignity intact." They looked at each other and burst out laughing. "You serious, old man?" Chad said. "You want to do push-ups against 3 college athletes?" "I'm dead serious," I replied. "Unless you're scared." That got them. Young men and their pride, always their weakness. What these boys didn't know was that I still maintained the same fitness routine I'd developed during my military years. 6 days a week in my own gym, starting every morning at 5 a.m. At 48, I was probably in better shape than I'd been at 25. "All right," Chad said, getting down on the asphalt. "But when we embarrass you, your wife comes with us." "When you lose," I said, "you apologize to my wife and delete whatever videos you've recorded. Deal?" "Deal," all three said simultaneously. I got down into position next to them. Perfect military form, hands shoulder-width apart, back straight, core engaged. The muscle memory was still there after all these years. "On 3, I said. 1, 2, 3. We started together. Their form was terrible. Hands too wide, backs arched, going too fast. I maintained perfect rhythm, counting out loud. 1, 2, 3. By 20, the man-bun kid was struggling. By 30, he'd collapsed. Sunglasses made it to 45 before his arms gave out. Chad pushed through to 60, his face red and sweating, before he couldn't manage another rep. I was at 75 and just getting warmed up. 80, 81, 82. My voice never wavered. The three of them sat on the asphalt, breathing hard and watching in disbelief as I continued. 90, 95, 100. I stood up, not even winded, and brushed imaginary dust off my shirt. 20 years in the Army. 12 of those as a fitness instructor training soldiers half your age. I still do 200 push-ups every morning before breakfast. The look on their faces was priceless. Chad's mouth hung open like he just watched someone defy gravity. The man-bun kid was still lying on the asphalt, staring at the sky. Sunglasses had his phone out, but his hands were shaking too much to hold it steady. "So," I said, straightening my tie, "about that apology to my wife." Chad scrambled to his feet, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. "Look, sir, we're sorry. We didn't know." "Didn't know what?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice ice cold. "That treating people with disrespect has consequences?" "We're really sorry, ma'am," the man-bun kid said, finally sitting up. We had too much to drink." "That's not an excuse," I said, "but it's a start. Now, delete those videos." They fumbled with their phones, deleting the recordings while Sarah and I watched. When they were done, I pulled out my own phone. "Smile, boys," I said, taking a picture of the three of them sitting on the parking lot asphalt, sweaty and defeated. "This is what accountability looks like." As Sarah and I walked to our truck, I could hear them behind us, their voices hushed and embarrassed, probably trying to figure out how they'd so completely misjudged the situation. "That," Sarah said, linking her arm through mine, "was the sexiest thing I've seen you do in years." "Really?" I asked, opening her door. Really? Those boys learned something important tonight about assumptions and respect. As we drove home, Sarah told me she'd recorded the whole push-up contest on her phone. Should we post it? I asked. Nah, I said. They've been embarrassed enough for one night. Sometimes the best lessons are private ones. But Sarah had already made up her mind. Michael Thompson, you just reminded 3 young men that age and wisdom will always beat youth and arrogance. The world needs to see this. 3 days later, our parking lot push-up challenge had over 2 million views across social media platforms. The comments were brutal but fair. Never judge a book by its cover, respect your elders, and this is what real fitness looks like. Chad and his friends became overnight internet sensations for all the wrong reasons. Their fraternity suspended them. The university launched a disciplinary investigation. Their parents saw the video. But the real victory wasn't in their public humiliation. It was in the message. Respect isn't given based on age or appearance. It's earned through character, and it's lost through arrogance. Sometimes, the best way to teach a lesson is to let people defeat themselves.